Today we're going to have a chat with Alan Cox from Fluent, and he's got a great story to tell. And I'll ask him, he'll tell us, and then we can talk about some of the things that Fluent's getting up to. Perhaps a little bit about you first, though, just before we talk about Fluent.
Oh, crikey. Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but I'll keep it as short as I can. Started off as a electronics engineer for GC Marconi Avionics years and years ago. Crikey, yeah, that's some time ago. I got into kind of engineering, sales, and very quickly got into software development, then design, and I think the main thrust of most of my career has been around product design, validation, user research,
And that, we'll talk about FluentIQ, and we'll be seeing that running along the bottom along here. Tell me a bit about the background, because your comments really resonate in terms of how it's starting to look as well. So tell me about the opportunity, the problem that you saw, and then the development of Fluent.
Yeah, well, originally looking at a recruitment product idea, actually, and that really come from my experience as an employer over the last 12 years. There's then times where it doesn't matter how hard you try, it doesn't matter what expert resources you use, you can still end up getting it so wrong. And it was like a big curiosity to me. Why is that? Why is that?
Where's the magic question? Where's the process?
Exactly. It's especially when you're hiring people like salespeople, that kind of where you perhaps hadn't hired them roles before. Anyway, that's kind of where it all started. And what we'd identified some technology out of the University of Canterbury. Which was looking at how you can look at micro expressions in voice, in facial expressions, and what have you, to determine certain things. Like say someone might not be genuine about an answer that they're giving, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So
being careful about my own expressions here.
Yeah. Well, I know them all. As it happened, so we got our investment, and there was kind of two main things that happened that kind of caused us to pivot somewhat. And one was that looking at it a lot deeper, what you can reliably determine from people's expressions is actually quite thin on the ground. So there's some very well-known people out there that make very good money from that, but actually, latest research says it's quite dubious. And the other key thing is that in order for that technology to scale, we'd need to look at applications that maybe don't need video. So like call centres don't have video, so anything you can get from voice. So we was really exploring the what we would need to do for voice when we started to come across the very specific needs for people that speak English as a second language, and that in fact is a much bigger market. It's much more attractive in terms of the positive outcome it can have, both for the person trying to get into employment to improve their station in life, and also on the other side, allowing employers to be more inclusive, to help their professional development of their team, that kind of thing. So really a win-win all round.
So the traditional language tests, which tend to have been written, do you understand the sentence? This is more in terms of conversational understanding, listening comprehension.
Yeah, so it's been a big learning curve for me. Obviously, it's just last year I've really had to immerse myself in it a great deal. But you're right. In order for the traditional way for an individual to prove their competence is by taking an exam of some kind that usually has about 3 hours worth of testing of reading, writing, speaking and listening. And there's a whole raft of problems with that. Firstly, these things cost $200 a time, and if you're not from a very well-off family or not a very well-off part of the world, you simply don't have that money. Especially if you fail the exam the first time, you need to do it again. It's not easy. Secondly, the actual test instrument, if you like, is based on very, very old understanding of linguistics, and there's new knowledge that says, in order for us to be intelligible in a real world situation, it's not about all the things that we're testing people on. And so we wanted to make something that was much more accessible, and something that is much more valid in terms of what real linguistic science says about people's intelligibility in a real world context.
And so the idea is that you would end up with a score, so that you could, valid score, reliable score, so that you could say, okay, I understand where this person sits on a scale of 0 to 10, and therefore either the person understands where the development areas might be, but more importantly, the employer says, okay, maybe if I had some inbuilt prejudice about someone coming from overseas with this person has enough conversational English that risk is really taken away. It's about risk mitigation.
It is, and so if you look at both sides of that story as you've explained it, is that for anybody that is even going for a traditional test today, they really don't know where they are, and often the people that they turn to say, "Am I ready?" are they're the kinds of organisations or people who would actually benefit them from them not actually passing and coming back
for more learning courses.
Exactly. And often, especially in Asian countries, for example, the very people that are teaching aren't actually brilliant at speaking English themselves. So having something that can tell people exactly where they are, what they need to improve is going to be a godsend for them. Even to say, look, you're not ready to take the test yet, that's high value. But yeah, absolutely on the other side is that what we're finding more and more as we speak to big employers, big recruitment companies, is that the traditional tests, the IELTS, TOEFL, Pearson, what have you, they're starting to become less and less accepted, and there's some very large organisations that we spoke to that are repeating a pattern of a decision, if you like, that says we won't accept that kind of certification anymore because they're so unreliable that we have to do a one-on-one conversation with everybody. And that in itself becomes a problem as part of the recruitment process. It's cost, it's time, and all of the above.
So it becomes an opportunity to, well, both ways. I guess it's an opportunity for perhaps raising some areas of caution. This person's technically very competent, but maybe not able to converse. It doesn't matter in that role. But more importantly, perhaps some area on the positive side of comfort, not a hurdle, but in fact an enhancement. Oh goodness, they've got the technical skill, but they also have the conversational skill that means we can perhaps take this risk.
Yeah, and look, there's a whole bunch of kind of different shades of grey and different types of, if you think of somebody's conversational shape, if you like, that some roles require you to have greater or lesser strength, if you like, in each area of language. So there'll be some roles where speaking and listening are incredibly important, but whether you can read or write, very, very competently is less important. There'll be other roles where it's the other way around. So with the main thing for employers here is that not only will you be able to very reliably say, have the confidence that this person is at the level that I need, and you can actually click on the link in the certificate, actually hear them and see them speaking, so that's another benefit. So it is a live certificate in that respect. But the other benefit is that you can, when you're hiring for a particular role, you can actually think, well, what kind of shape of person do I need here? So you can actually say, well, let's not just go for someone that's a blanket 7. Maybe we can say, well, look, we want someone that's an overall is about a 6 out of 10, but I do need them to be at least a 7 on the listening side, because it's really important that they can take an order.
And get and transpose it, get right. Or conversely, the fact that the written skill might be particularly important for that sort of role. I get you. So there's some granularity in terms of being able to then drive into certain aspects of it.
Yeah, it's just the four areas. Yeah.
And I guess from your point of view, the big hairy audacious goal is to become the standard.
I mean, we see that there's 2 main jobs to be done. One is to get ready for being good enough, and there's one is to be able to prove your credentials. So both of those rely on having a de facto standard, and we think we're well on the road to achieving that.
And what's the employer experience so far? Through Beta, you're now actually working with employers, and including us, Farrow, Jamieson. I'm picking the. So what's their feedback in terms of how it's integrated, how it's working?
Well, the main bit of feedback, which is, I guess, is the is really where the rubber hits the road, is when you get this score for this person, does it marry up with your mental model of what that number would be, right? Because what they had previously, it was just so all over the place, and it was so mismatched with what reality was that they lost trust. So when it comes down to, do you trust the numbers that Fluent is giving you? That's always a yes, and that's a really nice place to be. So really, what we're doing now is to we've done a lot of work with academia so far. So working with universities, language schools, pathway institutions. We're now just starting to have those conversations with recruiters, large enterprises, what have you. One of the particular areas which is emerging is this area of blind recruitment, or inclusive recruitment. So where you've got large organisations, maybe central government, local government, large employers, that need to prove that they've had a fair, equal opportunity process. What they can do through our product is say, well, we did open the doors to everybody. We did have a completely blind process to get people to this point. And that's where we dug deep.
So conscious bias stuff and going through.
So that's really helping with that as well.
It is, because we were just at a presentation today, and the Prime Minister was talking about forecast unemployment of 4%. Everyone pretty much accepts, Treasury I think says, that 5% is pretty much full employment. After lower than that, and you've got major scarcity, because there's a certain number that just don't want to work or don't go into work. So this shortage is very real, and we've all got to get our heads around the fact of saying, the old, gee, I wish they had local experience and all this technical expertise. It's not going to happen. we need to look at some other avenues, and this provides some surety and confidence along that line.
Well, it really, it's not only about the assurity and the confidence, it's also about providing an alternative way of increasing the pool, right? There's a huge pool of very willing and able people out there that could make a positive impact to our society, country, business, all of the above. But they're not people that have gone down the traditional road of getting, language certificates. They don't have the money. They haven't done that. It's not just about the $200 certificate. It's all the it's all the learning to get there. All right. So if you're whatever trade, whether you're going to be in forestry, manufacturing, whatever those things are, if you've got an ability to say, well, hey, look, if you was to accept me in, I'm a 5 or 6 at English, I'm going to be able to integrate and be a good, positive worker. It's a big hurdle to get over. So, yeah, at some point we'd love to be talking to immigration about that because, that's
a slow burn.
Yes, yeah.
Hey, thanks for your time. It's really interesting, and as I say, we're a supporter. We believe that there's a real place and where it fits, just in our part of the niche as well. Yes. So, hey, we wish you all the luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, time.